All right, there we go. With that being said and done, we are going to bring in the great Marge Lindsay. Marge, welcome. You know, a lot of people have asked me about you is where did Marge Lindsay amass her tremendous wealth? And what a lot of people don't know about you is you were there during the Great Gold Rush. You were there, and these miners would be coming down with piles of gold, and then they wanted to buy land, and so we didn't have escrow companies, we didn't have title companies, we didn't have wires and cashier's check. You were actually doing real estate transactions during the gold rush with just gold.
Now I know you still love me.
Yeah, gee, she drafted the contract for the Louisiana Purchase.
No, he told me. I named Plymouth Rock.
Oh, there you go.
Let's see. I sold the land that the White House was ultimately built on.
There you go.
See?
I was going to mention that one, but that's a sensitive subject right now. So,
Well, this is true too.
All right,
Anyway,
what do
it's
we got here?
good to have you. And I decided, I mean, first of all, the things that you guys were saying are so important, especially as we're getting ready for 2026.
yeah.
And I hope everybody grasped those things because everything that you said is vital, it's important, and it's true, especially the continuing prospecting to fill that pipeline. It's so essential.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So,
We are absolutely avoiding having to get these questions asked to us.
So if you're new to the Monday Morning Podcast, we try to get Marge Lindsay in as much as possible, and we go over these are real life situations.
Every one of them, yes.
And so there's nothing fabricated, exaggerated. These are what's happening, and then Marge tests our knowledge on these. And
and I decided for the second month to try and balance the playing field because last month, as Nick will attest, we got you.
Oh, yeah.
And
You
we
got
had-
whooped is what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we really did. And the beautiful part of it was I incorporated Dean Becker as one of our outstanding
Totally.
brokers
Yep.
in here. And so I asked him, do you want to help again? He said, oh, yeah. So
Knew that was happening.
all right,
Yep.
thank you, Dean.
Yep.
Okay, so let's look at your first one.
All right, the buyer broker is frustrated. He has submitted an offer to purchase. He submitted an offer to purchase to the listing agent, but has not received any response. So he's actually submitted an offer and didn't get a response.
Correct.
Oh, that's no bueno. He's experienced that too many times. Listing agents seldom acknowledge receipt of the offers, but when they do, they don't communicate results unless they are submitting an acceptance or a counter offer. So what can a buyer broker do to change this scenario, if anything? So I'm just going to start. I think there's some different points in this question. So if I submit an offer and I do not hear back, and I don't receive any response, I do know that I am not permitted to reach out to the seller as an agent and go, hey, tell your agent to check their inbox or whatever the case is. But my feeling is, I mean, obviously, technically, to the letter of the law, well, not the letter of the law, I mean, a no response is a no, but I don't even know if that seller's receiving the offer or knows about it. So that next step for me would be to reach out to the listing agent's broker.
Okay.
Close. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Mike. The time and the terms of acceptance, once it's expired, that deal's considered withdrawn. So that part takes place. But again, what happened? Did the seller see it? Did they get presented? Did they option to waive presentation of it? Did they present it and reject it? Because we know if they presented it and accepted it, to the point, Mike, they would be replying before the time and the terms of acceptance were over. But the Code of Ethics changed back, I think, in 2020, Article 1, Standard Practice 1-7, that added the second half of it, which basically says anytime a buyer's agent is concerned, or a buyer through their agent is concerned as to what happened with that offer, you as a buyer's agent would go to your broker would go to their broker would talk to them. And Article 1, Standard Practice 1-7 says that when asked, the listing broker shall provide an acknowledgement from the seller as to what took place. Did they waive it or did they just cancel it? So I'm going to go with Article 1, Standard Practice 1-7.
Bummer. That means he got it right.
Well, I got
Now,
part right.
yeah, the only thing that I would add to that now, and this was a national concern. I mean, from all of the states, Arizona included, buyer brokers are saying they don't acknowledge any of these things. I mean, what both, especially what Mike said, all of these things. I don't know if they presented it. I'm embarrassed. I don't know what to tell my client. You don't have to call the other broker. We don't have to have any one of our brilliant brokers. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I brag about them all the time.
Except for Dean.
No, I love Dean. Are you kidding? Go away. But you don't have to bother them with it. And actually, Todd's absolutely correct, and that's why I brought it in just in case. The Professional Standards Committee nationally said we don't need a new article for this, but what we can do is make it actionable on a Professional Standards Committee. So, because prior to that revision, there was no provision in the Code of Ethics that said we could sanction them in any way for not doing it. Now, and Todd's absolutely correct, you have to request in writing a response. So you can just simply send an email and say, hey, Mike, did you get the offer? What's happening? What's the status? Now, if they do not respond, file an ethics complaint. That's one way to get their attention. File an ethics complaint, let the panel make a determination. If they're found in violation, then they can be given sanctions, whether that's monetary, whether that's a letter of reprimand or letter of warning or additional education. But now there is a provision that will permit that to be taken care of.
And I always recommend when you do send that letter over, you send that request in writing. I personally like identifying Article 1, Standard Practice 1-7. Let them read it. You're really
Sure.
educating them. You're trying to be collaborative. You're not trying to say, I know more than you do, but you are. And so you're trying to represent your client better.
Yeah, I always have fun and say, well, you do understand the Code of Ethics, don't you, Mike? And he'll say, of course. Okay, specifically Article 1, maybe Standard of Practice 1-7. It's kind of fun when you know these things and you read it and you can be a smart aleck and show off because of that superior knowledge. I love it.
Well, I want to get back to the last question here is okay, I mean, in this scenario, the listing agent seems to be having the same problem over and over and over of not getting a response, right?
No, the buyer
buyer's
broker.
agent.
Buyer's broker.
Buyer broker.
So I'm going to put some culpability on the buyer's agent, the buyer broker of what does your process look like if you're getting the same treatment. So my first question is, are you even reaching out to the listing agent via text and phone calls prior to submitting an offer, or are you just submitting an offer without these phone calls? Are you having your lender call, whatever the case is? Because for me, I can't remember the last time, if ever, I've just blindly submitted an offer. I'm trying to establish this relationship, and I got some tricks I do with my calls and my text messages to really, because a listing agent, if they're just ignoring the offers because they're not good offers, I want to build that relationship with that agent prior to.
Well, and you can try that, and that's a wonderful way to try and foster those relationships. What was happening nationwide and even here in Arizona is that a listing agent got extremely busy, and we do have those times when they receive multiple offers, and their comment is, look, I received 12 of these. In the heyday, I received 50 of these, and you expect me to respond to every one of them? The answer is yes. The Code of Ethics is there. And I know one broker who said, I'll tell you what I do. I have a standard phrase that I work with, which basically says your offer was received. We thank you for that. The sellers, however, accepted another offer, and perhaps we'll be able to do business in the future. And then he said, I have staff or somebody send that out. And so it's sent out to everybody.
All righty. I just was saying there's just, before submitting an offer, there's things that agents can do to just build that rapport with
Exactly.
that other agent,
Correct.
and so forth.
You won this one. Let's move on.
All right.
No.
All right.
I want to
Number
beat
2.
you.
Owner and listing agent have agreed upon an exclusive right to sell rent listing agreement for selling the owner's home. The property has been on the market for 30 days with no offers. The owner thinks that a price reduction would be the best course of action, and they text the listing agent to reduce the list price of the home on the MLS. Can the agent reduce the list price with the given instructions? So This is a trick question because I know that there is a listing addendum that exists that should be executed. But for me personally, um, I find an email and texting if a client says, "Hey, please reduce the price of the home to this," and I may reply confirming those instructions. I at least have written instructions from the seller, and I would reduce the list price.
Yeah, I think that's the point here is what's taking place in the industry is a seller may tell the listing agent that they want to reduce the price, and the agent just goes in the MLS and reduces the price. However, what we don't realize is that we have to have written instruction from the client. So that way you take that written instruction. Now, the actual thing here is the word text. This is the trick word in this particular. You cannot rely on text as an instruction. It must be in the form of an email is probably the next least obstacle to obtain. So to your point, Mike, you said that. So I think you did pretty good in this one as well.
Well, I'm going to say you lose on this one.
Oh,
Now, the why, your thought process is good. But the reason I'm saying that, if you look at our listing form itself,
Dean is anticipating we have all these documents like the last time right here in front of us to be able to call the line number out.
like I have them in mind.
Yeah.
But if you look at it on lines 305 to 309
Of the exclusive right to
of
sell
the
or rent.
exclusive right to sell or rent listing form, yes, it tells you in there the methods that you can use to give notice and work with some of these things. And a text message from the owner isn't listed on here. So no, that's not going to work. Or if you look at the first page.
What are the ones, though,
Okay.
Marge?
Okay. If you look at the page 1, it also says this agreement may be modified only in writing, signed by owner and the listing broker. So receiving that from them is not adequate per the terms of the contract they've signed. You have to have a writing signed by both in order to make it valid. But you're right, we have a lot of different ways that we can do that. And we do have the listing addendum that you can work with. You have the MLS change order form. There are a lot of different ways that we can do it, but the key takeaway here is you need signatures from both.
To modify the terms and conditions of the contract, I agree. What are the different methods of communication? So you could use that and then say the seller and the listing agent agree that text shall suffice as a method of, okay, that's why you would need both the seller and the listing broker's signature to modify the terms of the contract. But it does already have in it those methods of communication that are acceptable. What are those?
Correct. Well, what are those? It just goes through.
Because I think the words are most important.
Yeah, in the contract. But all right, what it says, unless otherwise provided, delivery of all notices and documentation required or permitted shall be in writing, addressed to the owner or listing broker, as indicated in sections 11 and 12, and deemed delivered and received when hand delivered, sent via facsimile transmission, sent via electronic mail, if email addresses are provided herein, sent by recognized overnight courier service, or sent by U.S. mail, in which case the notice shall be deemed received when actually received, or 5 days after the notice is mailed, whichever occurs first. But again, the key takeaway and what we want you to realize there, you do need both signatures.
So that's a good point. So you got an elderly couple; they don't have an email. So at the or they do have an email, but on the bottom of the listing contract, they didn't put their email under their name and contact information. So that means that even though they have an email is not considered, per the terms and conditions of the contract, a viable channel to communicate with. And I think that's the important part here. So what we're tying together is this is the standard from here, and if you want to modify it from this particular period. And again, if they didn't put an email is not a valid communication source.
Yeah, and I think the thing is we become lax, and I didn't have it signed before. I have something in writing from the seller. I think that's adequate. And if you have a purist or somebody that says, hey, nope, that's not it, and or an attorney who can say, nope, that's not it, here's what it says, because it goes south somehow, some way, you want to be sure you know that we need those other forms.
Well, I guess my takeaway, I'm going to go out and buy a fax machine and only work with those that have fax machines, because according to this, fax machines are approved and text messages aren't. Makes no sense to me.
Well, and here's the thing. That was modified based upon the technology world that came into play. They increased it to have that.
All right.
That's true.
Communication.
Okay.
All right. All right.
1 and 1.
Buyer and seller are under contract for the purchase and sale, where the contract is contingent on the buyer selling their current residence, part 2 of the buyer contingency addendum. And line 65 is marked delaying the inspection period until 3 days after the seller accepts buyer's contingent contract. Buyer requested that an inspector to be allowed access to have an inspection performed. Is the seller obligated to allow access at this point? Ooh, that's a good one. Obviously, the buyer can request anything at any time, so that's not the issue. The issue is the seller obligated?
It doesn't say. So, at what time did the buyer ask the seller to have access? It doesn't say that here.
I want to come in now, have an inspector come in and look at it.
And you're saying that the seller has not yet accepted a buyer's contingent contract at this point.
No, in this case, they submitted this, and it was signed. The seller accepts, the contingent contract.
No, I get that part.
Yeah,
But did
okay.
the buyer have it now? So this was signed as part of the contract.
Correct.
Okay. Now I'm the buyer, and what you're asking is, have I already submitted to the seller my contingency, meaning my offer that I've received on my property that I've accepted? Have I already done that, or is this happening before that point?
No, this is happening before
Before.
that
Oh,
because
before.
the buyer wants
'cause
to
the
get a
terms of
head
the-
start.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to say no unless you modify the terms of the contract.
All right, then I'll go with what Todd says.
Copycat.
Pretty much.
Okay, 2 and 1.
All right.
But yeah, that's the whole thing. Sometimes we go ahead and start early, and you can't.
Yeah.
Nice.
But seller could allow it,
Well, they could.
but they don't have
They're
to.
not obligated to.
Okay.
And then probably you'd want to have some kind of written addendum saying that they can.
Sorry.
Yeah, I always feel like every once in a while we should just do an entire podcast or a class just on the buyer contingency addendum. There's so many nuances in it and so many different scenarios.
That's right.
That
And that would be a good class.
All right, number 4, an unrepresented buyer. So she only sent 4, so we got to nail this one, Todd.
No, I
right.
had 5.
Oh.
You didn't read your 5th one?
No.
Okay. Well, she can do it by hand.
Okay.
Okay. An unrepresented buyer submitted an offer to purchase the residence. Unrepresented buyer, which was ultimately accepted. The buyer is now seeking assistance and advice from the listing agent, and he has made several claims that the listing agent is obligated to help him. Is the listing agent obligated to provide assistance to the unrepresented buyer or provide a buyer advisory? So first of all, did he have the buyer sign an unrepresented buyer form, which I don't think really makes much of a difference here. But no, the listing agent is not obligated to provide any assistance. The listing agent's only obligated to provide information, not guidance or advice.
So is it R4 281101 or is it 322153? But one of them says that in the event that the buyer is unrepresented, or it was going the other way, you had a FSBO and the buyer was represented and the seller wasn't, that you have a duty to be fair with both parties. And fair in Arizona is typically defined as trustworthy and honest.
Right.
So that, and then the word help is a fiduciary word, which basically would mean that you are providing some type of representation assistance to the particular buyer, which you can't do because that would be crossing the line of the type of agency relationship that you have with your seller. So the question is, can the listing agent provide the buyer with a buyer advisory? My answer would be no. From that perspective, because that could include terms that would position the buyer to not want to follow through with the rest of the terms of the condition or use something in there to get out of the particular contract. So I'm just going to say a combination of fiduciary and state law. You have to be fair, which is trustworthy and honest. You have to provide full disclosure based on the disclosure law. However, you are not allowed to help them other than being truthful and honest with them, and you can't provide them with any additional documentation, or you shouldn't, because that may cause post issues. Marge?
Yeah, you could imply by doing that, you could imply dual agency or dual representation. You know, if you want to go through here and we say limited representation, all of those terms. So yeah, when they say you have an obligation to help me, the answer is no. But don't skip over what you were saying, Mike, because they should sign, or we should have them sign the unrepresented buyer agreement, so that they can't come back later and say, well, I didn't know, I didn't understand, I thought you were helping me.
Yeah.
Because they develop what I refer to as memories of convenience when something like that comes up. And the one thing that I really like too, Dean said, just as a best business practice, something that he likes to do is have that unrepresented buyer and tenants in an email communication read something that says, please remember, I don't represent you. I only represent the seller in
like
this
that.
transaction. Yeah. And he said, just putting that wording in there in and of itself is going to give us, some idea, because it's amazing how, as wrong as they are, buyers develop what I call a memory of convenience. Now they're going to remember
Selective
what's going to make.
amnesia.
Yeah, selective amnesia is good also. They're going to remember what they want to remember, which is going to be adverse to us.
It's like my kids. But what about, are we obligated to provide a buyer advisory, or can we provide a buyer advisory?
Okay, let me go with number 5, because in fairness to you, Mike, I sent you the 4 and then said I'll send you a 5th. You just obviously didn't see my follow-up. Okay, so the 5th scenario says the above referenced buyer, so we're going to just add a little spin to this. The above referenced buyer does not want representation, but they do want to purchase this residence. They ask you as the listing agent to write it for them, but they will specify the terms and the details specifically for you. So you're not going to be coming up with this, you're just doing this for them. So the question is, under these circumstances, is the listing agent now able to fill out the contract for representation to the seller and provide those forms?
Or to mean to the buyer?
Yes.
Um,
Sorry, yeah.
yeah. So if I have an unrepresented buyer, they don't have access to any forms.
Correct.
And so in my world, which I would do, because I don't do dual agency, so I want all the brokers to appreciate that. But I would get to have that conversation with the buyer. What are the terms that you're offering? I would, and I might be getting myself into trouble, I would probably send over a copy of the purchase contract, put draft on it so that they understand what's in it, and have them direct me on what they want filled in. And I would then, at that point, I would complete the contract without advising them and send it out for signatures.
Okay.
Okay, so I like a couple of things. Number one, if you're a listing agent, the buyer's unrepresented, I think it's reasonable that you give the buyer a copy of the listing contract if that's the one your seller wants to use, and allow the buyer to seek their own legal counsel. And your email should say that. And do you want to continue with this particular document? The other piece is, I have seen it where listing agents do actually write the offer, but instead of sitting down with the buyer, listening to what the buyer wants to do, instead you write that you write the purchase contract as the way the seller wants it written, including the list price only, and you submit that document to the buyer and allow them to continue doing it and seek their own legal representation if they want representation or explanation on anything that's in the terms. But anything you would write other than what the listing says would potentially be argued that that's the wrong behavior. So I would recommend that you'd write it the way the seller wants it written and submit it to the buyer, kind of a reverse pattern.
Indirectly, you're right. And the reason I say that, the whole thing here, for those who attended, and Nick fortunately was able to attend with me, the
Industry partner.
broker. I'm going blank here. What was it called?
The Industry Partners Conference, the ARs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Industry Partner Conference that I know so well. But I did. I asked Nick if he'd like to go with me to that. And the attorneys, we had some strong attorneys on a panel up there, and they said, under no circumstance should we ever write it for them, period. Because that implies or infers a limited representation or dual agency situation, which creates a lot of problems. And they all have done very well financially because of the mistakes we make
Sure.
that way when they're trying to defend us. So they said, even if they beg you, plead, and everything else, you should never write the offer for them. And they're not realtors, and we can only provide the forms that are copyrighted forms for if there's a client relationship. And there is no client relationship. Now, what they did recommend is write an offer from the seller. That's why I said I'm going to give you this one too, Todd. But write the offer, or have the seller write the offer and give it to the buyer. And let the buyer then make a determination on, what they want to do without you giving them advice, without you giving them counsel. And what's really great about that, I did talk with both Dwayne and Dean, and it's not that I don't love Claudia and Kyle. I just wasn't going to pester all four brokers. But in talking with them, the forms committee this weekend are coming up. One of the newest forms is the additional revisions on the additional clause addendum. And in that additional clause addendum, they have specifically addressed those issues. And now the beauty of it, in talking with Nick this morning, he said that Dwayne actually revised his schedule to come in Monday and be here Monday and talk about the additional forms and so forth. Because Dwayne said, come after November 1st, especially because we have this form now, the broker advice is going to be, do not write the offer for the buyer. Write an offer from the seller, give it to the buyer for consideration. And some of the wording, just to give you an idea in here, because they do have a red line form that's here, and it says in here, offer initiated by seller. Whoops, I'm running as Pat's time, aren't I?
You got a minute, 2 minutes left. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All previous offers and counteroffers made by either seller or buyer are hereby rejected. The terms and acceptance section of the contract is removed in its entirety and replaced with terms of acceptance. This offer is initiated by seller. The attached contract signed by seller dated such and such will become a binding contract when buyer signs Section 8S of the contract, and all incorporated addenda and a signed copy is delivered in person by mail, facsimile, Mike, or electronic mail, and received by the broker on certain time frames. And then the other words that, the seller may withdraw it at any time prior to acceptance. But then there's also a space where it says unrepresented buyer notice. Buyer is currently unrepresented by a broker. Sections 8Q and 8R of the contract are removed. Buyer consents to delivery and receipt of notices and documents required or permitted by the contract when delivered in person, sent via email, and so forth. So they've made those revisions because that's where we're going, and that's where the litigation has been.
Yeah.
And we always want our agents to be at the forefront.
All right, I just have one quick question. Let's just say I'm in this scenario and I've done everything right, okay? And I got an unrepresented buyer and I'm representing the seller and everything's right, and now we're under contract and now we're in the inspection period. And then they ask me, do you have any inspection companies that you can recommend? Can I recommend anything to them, or are they 100% on their own?
Well, I think in an ideal world, we'd say let them make the determinations, let them make the decisions on what they're going to do that way. So they, again, aren't going to be able to come back and say, well, you gave me one that you were friendly with that was going to work against me.
All right. Good stuff, Marge. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dean. All right, we leave you with the quote of right home isn't just found, vision and hope. Appreciate you joining us today. Go out and sell a home.